Good afternoon. How are you doing today? Welcome to Expansion of Consciousness. I am Jason Medlock, and we're back. We're back, and it's been a long off season for us. We were able to reformat the entire podcast, and now we're back from I'm woke to expanding our consciousness. And there have been a number of things that have taken place since we finished our last show, December 2021. A number of events, people that have been behind the scenes helping put this whole operation together. It's just been a fantastic journey. Um, tonight, tonight we have Tony Sivalelli. He is when I tell you this guy is big time, he is big time. Scientific remote viewing instructor, UFO researcher. He's intuitive. He's researched, numerous UFO cases, documentaries, with the conclusion that all of this information is from another world, is from another intelligence. But Tony Sivalelli has trained me also in scientific remote viewing, and I have had a fabulous time working with Tony. And without any further ado, I won't get too deep into his background because Tony's going to do that. He's going to do a great job of that. But without any further ado, Mr. Tony Sivalelli. Hey, Tony, how you doing?
Good, Jason. It's a pleasure here being on your show, and it's been an even greater pleasure to get to know you and work with you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Tony, I'm glad you came on. I've been wanting to get you on the show for some time now. And it's the first show of 2022, and I'm excited about what this season will hold. We had a number of shows. We had 13 shows the last episode, and they were a huge success. But I knew when I kicked off this season, I wanted to have you on. You left such a positive, enlightening impression on me. And I just cannot thank you enough for opening my eyes to understanding how to get answers from the subconscious mind. And that was one of the most beautiful things that I experienced while working with you. But talk to me a little bit. How you doing?
Thank you. Good. Thank you for the introduction. I'd like to meet this person, for goodness gracious sakes. Anyways, it's really all you. You came in with an open mind. You have an idea that there's a much bigger picture. You've had your own experiences, and so basically I was just able to just open the door just a little bit for you there, and you took off with it. So that's the beauty of it.
And speaking of experiences, there are a number of people out here in this world that are having these experiences, that are being able to locate items in a distant place just by using their subconscious, waking up to dreams of being abducted. I mean, Tony, what's going on out here?
Jason, this subject is so deep. I've had to get philosophical to really come up with, some type of an answers. And everything you hear from me this evening is just in my humble opinion. But I've been researching, the idea of what I call not of this earth intelligences. And I call it that because it could have anything to do with extraterrestrials from another planet, interdimensionals from another dimension of existence, time travelers from our very own future or somebody else's future, time travelers from our very own past civilizations here on Earth. And then there's all kinds of dis and misinformation that goes along with it because you have to stay objective. There's, whatever you want to call it, different things that take place to kind of throw people off. But by no means do I think that these things are not real. There's a lot of different things going on. And again, I said I had to get philosophical about it. And I'll kind of answer that towards the end. Please remind me, if you will, where my destiny has taken me on the infinity loop.
But what we're going to do now, we're going to take a step backwards. If you just logged in, you're listening to the Expansion of Consciousness. You can find us on YouTube. Just type in Expansion of Consciousness. You can find us on Facebook. Type in Expansion of Consciousness, or on Twitter. Tony, I'm going to take this conversation a little bit backwards, and we're going to talk about how it all started, and we're going to add something to the screen.
Yep,
and just screen here. The audience, if you could, walk them through your journey.
And I will, and I got like a little slide presentation with that. My green screen is not up and working yet. I thought I had that going, but we're going to go through a little bit of my history here so people can get familiar, your listeners. your audience, who we have, you have a lot of enlightened people here that follow this show. So first, thank you to you for having me on the show. And all of this, again, is in my humble opinion. But how all this started for me was roughly when I was about 7 years old. It was a school night. And I remember going to sleep, getting ready, jumping in the bed and getting ready to go to sleep. And what happened, Jason, is I just closed my eyes, and I remember this well for like 3 to 5 seconds. And then I opened them again. And my mother came into the bedroom and said, "Come on, let's go. You're going to be late for school." And I just kind of said, "Oh, I just went to sleep." And, kind of like the, "Don't bother me" type of thing. And she goes, "Let's go. You got to get going. You're going to be late." So she cracked the curtain a bit. And it was, it wasn't as dark out. And I'm like, what just happened? Is like literally a 3 to 5 second, eyes closed, opening them. And then all of a sudden it was morning. And I said, "Well, I just closed my eyes." I told her that. And she said, "Oh, you probably just had a good night's sleep." I thought to myself, yeah, I've had good night's sleeps before, but nothing like this. So that was an oddity. Obviously, people might look at that as something type of missing time episode or something like that. I've never had regressive hypnosis with it. I just knew from that moment on how we understand time may not be really what it is all about.
Yes.
Nothing really happened that I can remember that was very supernatural after that. And in fact, it wasn't until I believe it was like a junior high school class that I had this independent reading course, and I chose the book Chariots of the Gods to read that. And I was good to give a report to the teacher after that, the one-on-one type of report. And I could use index cards, like a few index cards for some notes. And I remember reading this book, and as I was reading it, I was getting pretty fascinated. Obviously, it's by Eric von Däniken, and this was released in 1968. I read it, much later than that, of course. But I remember thinking to myself, if this is really going on and all these different things are possible, because Von Däniken would put it in a lot of perhaps or maybe this is going on, what if?
Which by the way, is a outstanding book.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Always mention on, the show like Ancient Aliens, things like that. And Von Däniken has been on there many times, etc. So when I went to give the report of the book, the teacher was, asked me, "Well, tell me about the book." And so I started talking about it. I didn't even use the notes, the cards that I had. I just was pretty fascinated by the whole idea of where on earth in these different geographic locations, different architectural structures were put up, and some of them were very similar. And obviously they didn't have means to travel other than the water, and nobody was crossing the oceans and the seas back in those, time periods. And I asked, the teacher, I said, if all this is going on, why doesn't anybody know about this? And he just looked at me and said, well, maybe it's real or maybe it's not. And he was just fascinated by my enthusiasm about the subject. So after that, I kind of kept in the back of my mind. I had an interest in sci-fi shows, everything from Lost in Space to Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, all the typical 1960s, 70s type of sci-fi type of shows. And it didn't really come up again until in my early business years in the 90s, somebody gave me a gift, and it was the book Embraced by the Light by a lady named Betty Eady, who had a near-death experience. And she talked about how an angelic being whisked her away and took her to different locations throughout, the immediate galaxy and into other dimensions and things like that. And it was an interesting book to me. And then one of the chapters, it was called Other Worlds, where she was taken to other worlds, and they talked to her a bit about the civilizations that this would be just one of them that traveled to other planets, and they would have some type of, an influence on how these planets might develop, that type of thing. And that immediately sparked my memory of Chariots of the Gods.
Right.
And from there, I kept it again in the back of my mind. And then it wasn't until like the latter part of the 90s when I just happened to watch the TV show on the Fox TV channel, Alien Autopsy. And I remember watching that and following it. It was Jonathan Frakes narrating it from the Star Trek Next Generation series. And I remember watching it, and I didn't know for sure if that alien that they had there, the autopsy on, was real or not.
Real or not, yeah.
Yeah, but the people they were interviewing were very real. People like Jesse Marcel Jr., his dad, Jesse Marcel Sr. was one of the first officers at the Roswell crash, and he had to pick up some of the debris. His son was there, Frankie Rowe. Different people from the UFO field were there. People like Walter Haut, who did the public information. He was a public information officer out of Roswell, New Mexico. And this was all about the Roswell incident in 1947 that happened in Roswell, New Mexico. And again, I wasn't sure the autopsy was authentic, but what the people were talking about, the way they voiced, the way they looked, the sincerity with them, I said, there's no way this many people could have this type of a sincerity, because I trust myself as a pretty good judge of character. And so I thought, you know what, this incident probably happened. So what I did after that is I started a mass learning of getting information from books, libraries, reading about the Roswell incident, listening to different, radio shows, Coast to Coast AM, watching different different documentaries about UFOs and if we've been visited in the past, etc. So I just started a big frenzy with it, and it was something I had a great passion for. And after that, I started doing some traveling. I actually went to what was called Area 51, which is also called Dreamland and Groom Lake and S4 and all these things. And I went out to the black mailbox, which was actually a white mailbox at the time. Then I also, on the way there, took a picture of something that was coming down from the sky and going down into the grounds of Area 51. And this is just an actual photo that was taken in the summer of 1999 about some type of stream of light that I saw. And the photo just doesn't do it justice. And this was an older camera, of course.
And I'm sure that people that camp out there, they see all kind of things in the skies at night.
Yes. And even that night, while a couple of buddies of mine and I were out there, we were witnessing what was called war games, and they were jets, numerous amounts of jets just flying, and they sounded like thunder going across the sky. But then I noticed something off to the side, and it was like in the mountain area, it would be like a light on, and then it would flick off, and in an instant of a second, it would be like 3-4 miles away. And then it would be another location 3-4 miles away, then another location. And then I got to thinking, wow, this has got to be something that they're testing, because the war games may have been like throwing everybody off that might have been interested in, camping out there and looking at things. But this is really what was going on. And I had a gut feeling that it was some type of back engineered technology, maybe potentially of extraterrestrial, not that was a craft itself, but that something was being tested that had, some type of an ability to almost appear and then reappear in a moment's notice in, miles away, it seemed like.
Wow. And that's incredible. There are countless stories about UFOs and technology. Even on the show Gaia, they have the show. I mean, they have the show Cosmic Disclosure.
Oh yeah, plenty of different people. Program. My hats off to all those people.
I know the whistleblowers.
Mention names, yep, Emery Smith, etc. It's very, very fascinating. Yes,
very fascinating.
And so then I made trips to Sedona, Arizona, in 1999 as well. Took the time to meet an Indian guide who also had a UFO experience, and he shared that with me. And we did some hiking and some traveling in there, and we just did a lot of meditating. And I wanted to ground myself with the earth, but also find out more information about UFOs. And so Rahilio taught me a couple of different things about what he had learned about it and his experiences with it, and some of his people that had come out there, their experience. And I appreciated him sharing all this bits and pieces of information. And then I'm accumulating all this information as we're going along as well. And then I went out to Roswell, New Mexico in the summer of 2000, and I met for myself Walter Haut, who's in that picture there. The small black and white picture is how he looked in 1947, and that is him with me up there in the middle of the screen. He was the man that actually he was the public information officer that wrote this article here in the Roswell Daily Record. Roswell Army Airfield captures flying saucer on ramp in Roswell region. And so I had a good talk with, Mr. Haut, and that was at the Roswell Museum there, the UFO Museum. And then he talked to me and he saw my sincerity, and he always said, he saw pieces of the craft before, but this he actually told me, and he had never said anything about it publicly, but he he confided to me that he actually saw bodies there as well. And I thought, well, wow, is he really, talking about this now, or is he just, just coming up with a story? Because he never talked about it like on the alien autopsy or some of the other interviews that he had. And it came to be like, I don't know, 7, 8 years later, he made a deathbed statement. His daughter was there, and that he talked about how he had seen, the bodies from the wreckage that were at the Roswell Army Airfield back in 1947 after they collected the debris. And obviously there was a couple different crashes in the area then, and Roswell was just like a tip of the iceberg type of thing, but that somehow got out, and it might even have been publicly planted that way for use later on. There's a lot of different reasons. There's so many different things. Where were the beings from Roswell from? And I've gotten different information, everything from, they're from future civilizations that kind of came here in the past to, a time traveling alien, or people from Mars, surrogates from beings that are living on Mars now, and they're kind of like they're half human, half biological, worker bees type of thing. And then I've gotten information from, they're an experiment, Nazi scientists are in Brazil and they're experimenting with different things. I mean, I must have other dimensionals going back and forth, probably 20 answers to the Roswell question in of itself. And it always goes back to a well-known UFO researcher once told me there's only a need for disinformation if there's actually information out there. So I definitely feel, Roswell was just one of many crashes that had some legitimacy to it. But I also do think there's a lot of black ops projects and projects that are well ahead of anybody's understanding here. And sometimes there's an incident that they are seen and understood as extraterrestrial or interdimensional or time traveler UFOs. So I think there's that aspect to it as well.
So having that background in the UFO investigative field, and obviously you are one of the members of MUFON.
Yes.
Then you found yourself at the Farsight Institute in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Walk us through that. How'd that happen?
Well, I'm definitely getting to that. I also shared information. Robert Odine, Command Sergeant Major Robert Odine shared information with me. Lieutenant Colonel Wendell Stevens shared information with me. That was all part of attending, conferences, probably 15, 20 conferences between the years of 1996 to 2010, and anywhere from San Jose. Many of them were in Las Vegas, Laughlin, the International UFO Congress Conference. I met many people there. I also spoke at one of them because of a project I worked on involving remote viewing. And then I came up with a book, and it was called Entitled Ambassadors to the Stars. And it's an accumulation of a lot of the different people I've spoken to, some of my experiences, abductees that I've spoken to, contactees, all alleged in the book as well, scientists, military people, my learning of remote viewing, my learning and studying the out-of-body experience. And these are different people that I talked to and met, and I'm trying to get now to the point where it has the whole UFO. Wrong one here. RV begin here. Okay. Yes. And then the history of remote viewing came into place. I was into the whole UFO field, Jason, and then a documentary that I saw came out on the TV series Nightline, and it talked about psychics being used by the United States military. So I wanted to check it out. I watched the show, and I thought it was pretty interesting that the military was using psychics, and I felt, wow, that was kind of a surprise. So after that, I then saw another TV show, and it was of the History Channel. And that had to do with it a little bit deeper than the show on Nightline. And it talked about the history of UFO, scientific remote viewing, which involved Russell Targ, Hal Puthoff, and Ingo Swann. And they put this group together in the early 1970s out of Stanford Research Institute. And they brought Swann from New York, the East Coast, and to the West Coast. And they developed something that had information that would go from the subconscious mind to the conscious mind to pen to paper and would produce psychic-like results, and they called this remote viewing. But remote viewing was just a name, And Stanford was tied through a think tank, through various corporations, and the military got wind of this, and they approached a group out of SRI and said, you know what? We've had an interest in this ourselves. We've dabbled into it. We'd like to know if you, the group here out of Stanford, would like to take this to the next level. And they wanted to give them an exploratory grant for quite a bit of money at the time. And so the group out of Stanford said, yeah, we would love, to take this to the next level. So they gave them that grant, quite a bit of money at the time. And what they did is they brought in a couple of their scientists that had an interest in the paranormal and parapsychology. And then they brought in several other psychics. And they tweaked what was called the remote viewing procedures. And that was mostly developed initially by Ingo Swann. And he taught Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff. And then they started working with other people, so-called psychics. And as they brought them in, and they were catching on to this, how it was being done. And it was in a scientific manner, similar to what we have been going through with your training. And what happened after that is that it started leaking out into the general populace that this was going on. And this was back in the early 90s. So it went from almost 20 years before the general populace really got a wind that this was coming out. And they brought in different people from the military, and they also trained them as well. And they started with 6 initial people, and then they started bringing them back and forth, and they went through different names. They're called Project Grill Flame, Project Stargate, Project Gondola Wish, and it was the year Psi Spies was born, and quite a bit of money, actually millions of dollars, was spent on it.
So we only have about 12 minutes left, so we'll move quickly. For the layman person, for the person who didn't follow everything, what exactly is remote viewing?
It's a great question. I'm going to try to zip through this real quick here, and with some slides, show you what I think of. Some of it, think of it as a double slit experiment. Like, we all are energy. The essence of who and what we are is energy. So we have some type of a template in us that can be scientifically measured, that sends out almost like radio signals. Mm-hmm. And the closest thing I can think of it, where people can maybe make a quick comparison, is something like telepathy, like twins. When one twin and this has been scientifically documented, there's books on this. When something happens to one twin and the other one could be miles away or across the United States, the other twin might know something happened, but it has to be strong emotionally. Okay, right. Whether it's a positive or a negative, there's some type of a frequency that they are both on. Well, everybody has this frequency because in the essence, we're all energy. So if you open yourself up to a higher state of understanding, a higher state of awareness, you can then become more aware of subtle feelings, information. It's hard to say exactly what it is. Is it like the double slit experiment, like this right here? Is it like the twin telepathy? It's ESP, extrasensory perception, like Russell Targ says. This has been going on forever. We just give it different names. Now we call it New Age or something like that. I don't have the exactness. I would say we're all in energy, and there's an electron interface going on, and there's some aspect of us that can act almost like a radio tower that can pick things up that we have and are sensitive to.
So around the same time, around 1998 to I guess around 2000, you were trying to understand astral projection. You were at the Monroe Institute, learning how to leave your body and experiencing those things. Talk to us about that for a little bit. Yeah,
after I left the Far Site, by the time I was done with that week, I was there with 15 other students. They had mentioned that if you want to take this to the next step or take this further, we're going to have more advanced classes, which I eventually went to. But they thought that learning about the out-of-body experience at a particular location called the Monroe Institute in Faber, Virginia, would be a good way to help enhance remote viewing awareness. So I took that trip to Faber, Virginia. And again, it was a very eye-opening experience, just like the remote viewing experience was. Yeah. And I initially learned the initial part of the Monroe Institute, which actually uses sound waves. They use binaural beat sound waves, something that you can hear from your regular perception of hearing, which is between 5 and 20,000 hertz, and then something that's below your conscious hearing, which is between 1,000 and 1,500 hertz.
I was told it was best to listen to the binaural beats with headsets on.
Yes, we are using them with headsets on, and we were in cubicles. And what happens is that binaural beat creates a cerebral wavelength inside your brain that creates a neurological effect. This is how the Monroe Institute works, that allows theta brain wave data to be transferred to the waking state, which is the beta brain wave data. Real quick, you have 4 states of brain wave data. Delta, when you're asleep, below 4 hertz. Theta, which is just before you're awake and just before you're falling asleep, when you're most open to the most subtle energies around you. That's between 4 and 7 hertz. And then between 8 and 13 hertz is the alpha. That's a daydreaming state. And then you have 14 and 32 hertz, which is the beta brain wave state. That is your waking state, your conscious mind. The Monroe Institute tapes create that binaural beat that creates that cerebral wavelength that allows a neurological process to take place inside the brain that allows theta brain wave information to be transferred to the beta brain wave conscious state. So you remember dreams better. You can remember out-of-body experiences better if they happen, astral projection, etc. Also, it can come back symbolic because it has to be filtered through the conscious mind as well. And that's the way that works. And then I went back to the Monroe Institute for another whole week of training. And this time I was very, how should I say, thankful that the 2 instructors there were also guest instructors, Joe McMonagle and Skip Atwater, who were part of the original remote viewing military unit. And that's when I learned that the Monroe Institute was also a prerequisite for the military remote viewers. And then after that, I went back to the Farsight Institute again, where I originally learned remote viewing. This time I took a more advanced course and learned how to teach it. And I have been working with remote viewing since 1997.
And that was my next question. So tell us now, what are you doing these days? Give the audience a pretty good understanding on what you're doing these days, and how can someone who wants to understand remote viewing, who wants to understand out-of-body experiences, how can they reach you? And
yeah, I appreciate that. They can reach me through I have a website, www.learnremoteviewing.net. They can go through the website. Feel free to ask me different questions. There's a contact page there. They can ask me questions about remote viewing. If they would be interested in the courses are there. And that's how you initially met me, through a mutual friend that we have, Mr. Roderick Martin, which thank you, Rod. And there's a lot of different things there. The book is there. There's so much to cover, Jason. It's just unbelievable. And, I had to get philosophical to make a lot of sense out of it. And if you got another 5 minutes here, I could just throw a brief scenario on how I think, my humble opinion, what's going on.
Well, let's do this.
Save it for another time.
Let's do this, because I want you back on the show, because we have to really dive into remote viewing. There are so many other questions in out-of-body experiences and stuff like that. So you're coming back, but how can remote viewing, the average person is watching this show, what would you tell them? Why would they even take this lesson from you? What can they benefit from learning?
Great question. That's a really good question. They'll learn how to do remote viewing, but the biggest thing this type of training will do, and this has been proven through many, many different courses and many, many different schools of thought with it. There's different varieties of remote viewing, but scientific remote viewing goes back more to the original Stanford Research Institute with the original people that put it together. What it's going to really do, not only allow you to do some remote viewing, it's going to increase a person's cognitive ability, their intuition. It may help memory, it may help a person to be able to focus. It's going to allow people to use that sixth sense, that third eye. They're going to recognize gut feelings. They're going to notice more synchronicity in their life.
Right.
Because this type of studying and practice allows you to open up an aspect of a person's being, mainly the subconscious aspect, and bring in information to and through to the conscious mind. So all these things are already there. A person has all this ability, but it's like a muscle. It's like the body. You have to exercise it to get the most out of it. And this type of course, scientific remote viewing, allows you to open up and start exercising these areas of your mind to allow this information to come through. And then it's up to you to record it and try to filter it out as you have learned from the subconscious to the conscious, and get the symbols, get the little inklings, the gut feeling that comes through, the quiet voice that comes through. Sometimes it's spontaneous. You just get something. It's very spontaneous out of nowhere, but it's great information about what a target is. And once you start doing this, you will prove to yourself that you are more than a physical body. You will know some aspect of you had to go somewhere and somehow to bring this information that's might boggle your mind about a target that you have there. You'll get other bits and pieces of information, but there's no way you can get some of this real accurate information. And that's when it proved to me when I was at the Farsight Institute in 97 originally. We had like 15 people there. It's not that you could get real good information. That's a great feeling. But when you start getting 6, 7 people getting the same bits of information and the colors and something that shows up, it's got to be working. There's just no ways around it. And that's just how this proves that we are more than a physical person.
And I say that all the time, but as usual, you continue to bend my mind and bend my thought process and open up my conscience, and to always look past where we are today,
right?
And just think about the present. And I can remember just going through a lot of the training. I started to really rely on my subconscious mind to answer things for me. It was the craziest thing I had ever experienced in my life. And before you know it, I was actually putting my consciousness at the actual location and picking up bits and pieces of information of the target you've given me. But so, Tony, this is a great program. We're going to have you back on, but we've run out of time. And
understood.
I'm going to move you to the back room, but we appreciate you coming on. And
thank you very much, Jason. It was my pleasure, and hopefully your viewers got something out of it.
Oh yeah, they did, and trust me, a lot of people wanted to really get a chance to hear you talk about this topic,
right.
and is others, because I've been sharing the successes I've had using it in a number of ways.
And you have had some good successes too. What do I always say? Quiet your mind and let the data come to you. Don't think about it. Just let it happen.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm gonna move you to the back room. Don't go anywhere. But guys, Tony Sivalelli, what a great opportunity to learn about his background as a UFO investigator with MUFON. And the fact that he's gone to the Bob Monroe Institute in Virginia and learned the scientific background on out-of-body experiences and how to leave your body. And he's a scientific remote viewer. He's a professional instructor. And I was teasing him a little bit. I'm like, hey, you probably can tell just about anything you want to know at any given point, at any given time across the world. He's like, no, you can't use it like that. But I just wanted to share that with you guys, and what a wonderful time it is to be able to use your subconscious mind, to be able to try your best to block out everything else that's going on in the world, and really focus and start to ask questions about your life and start to move yourself to a better place. And you can do that through remote viewing, and I recommend it. But I want to thank you guys for coming out and listen to our first show of 2022. We have a very loaded season for you. And thank you so much. This is Jason Medlock with Expansion of Consciousness, and we will see you guys the next time. Good night.